Hey folks, welcome to Unqualified, the fantasy football podcast that's been doing lobster bake since 2017. I'm your producer, Rob Wiesendorf, here with Sean Brady and Scott Johnson, two fantasy football rivals that have been sabotaging each other for years, but they decided to come together to help you win your league and make your friends look like idiots. How's it going, fellas?
Let's go. That was a great intro.
Fantastic. That was nice. That slapped.
We've been doing lobster bakes for years.
But we decided to
we
come
do
together.
our lobster bakes, but we decided to come together with a special guest named Frank VanDyke.
The host.
Yes, sir.
What's up,
Today's
everyone?
special guest, he was the host of the lobster bake. We all got together a couple weekends ago. Frank said, please bring White Claws. We brought at least 100.
You didn't bring White
drank
Claws,
them
Rob.
all.
You brought another brand. An off-brand.
I brought...
That slapped.
Okay, let's not make fun of it because they
I
slapped.
Hey, at
liked
least
it.
it
It was the
slaps.
hibiscus thing. What brand was it?
What were they called? Bon Vive, I think.
That's the
They were even fancier than White Claws.
lamest name I've heard. Bon Vive.
Oh, fuck yeah.
It's
They
that
had good
French
graphic
water,
design.
man.
That was unnecessary. Honestly.
They had a nice design, and that is why I bought them.
I had
Okay.
the tangerine hibiscus flavor it slapped.
It was freaking lit.
And that's
Right?
the third time you slapped in a minute and a half in this episode. So
You guys are
And then-
overlooking the true star of the lobster bake, though. It's not about the seltzer. It's about the lobster.
No,
Oh,
it's about
that
the
was Frank.
lobster,
Frank.
man. Come
Well,
on.
Frank was also a star, but not quite as much as Larry sitting on my plate. He was the real star.
you named your Larry the Lobster. All right, I like that. I dig it. I was a lobster.
Living like
it was,
Larry.
This was, keep in mind, this was like the 100-degree day that we had in New York, so it was spicy out.
Yeah, it was really, really hot. And then not only was it hot, the lobster, we weren't prepared to crack open the lobster.
Not at all.
No.
Frank had to give us a crash course on lobster cracking because us city boys, we don't know how these sea crustaceans get cracked.
Best part
Also,
about it. Best part
So what
about
is
it for
the
me
actual
was,
technique, Frank?
So my favorite part was when I had to tear the tail off of the body for you.
Yeah,
You
that
like
was-
squ-
that
it
was
was like
unpleasant.
he made like a little noise, but I don't know. He was a little bit intimidating. There was a lot going on there. Plus, there's
mean
like
when
you
he,
know,
like,
the goop
jumped up?
inside. You got to clean that out. It's a little bit of a business, you know.
I'm not messing with the tail. That's what I learned. I learned my lesson.
He's a claw
I don't mess
man.
with
He's
the
a
tail
claw man.
anymore. I'm a claw.
He's a
I'm
white claw
strictly
man.
a claw man.
He's a white
Yeah,
claw
Rob?
man.
He didn't even want to deal with like the elbow region, like that attaches
Nope.
to the claw.
Oh, the
He wanted-
knuckles? Yeah,
I had to
exactly.
twist that off for him.
Or the leg. Are you
He
talking
was
about
not
the legs?
nice.
Like little like spiny legs?
Oh
Once
yeah,
You were
look-
getting into it, Frank.
If
I
you
don't know
look
how you're
the
doing
lobster in the eye, even for a second, it's over. It's all over. You can't look the lobster in the face. It's going to be over.
it. Dude, I don't know what it is. I didn't have one. It's the antenna, I think. The antennas. What's the plural of antenna? Antennae? Antennas?
I guess, right?
What have
Antennae,
you.
whatever
Those
the
just
fuck.
like freak me out. And the eyeballs are on there. Like, take the face
Yeah.
off for, like, even though it's
I
shrimp,
don't know.
I'm like, nah.
Yeah. See, Scotty's not used to eating animals that still have the face on it. You want that cut
I'm
off.
a little bitch, so.
I don't know how we're out here on land freaking out about spiders, but then we're going and we're eating lobsters and we're just pretending like we're not afraid of them.
Yeah.
No, they freak me out, man.
Like it's a normal
I
thing
think
to
it's
do.
bullshit. They are fucking freaky.
They freak me out.
you want to know why?
Crap.
It's because you douse them in butter, and when you do that with almost any food,
Douse
it
them.
hits different.
Right.
It just hits different.
It's different.
I'd love to have like a carousel of lobsters just spinning around in front of me.
It's a
and
great
I
word you just used there. I wonder
Carousel.
I just have.
where you
I would
got
just
that.
love to have unlimited butter just dripping over them because you can never get enough.
See, I can't
You
think
think
of any
lobster
other
comes
food
right off
besides
cold butter?
like corn on the cob that you douse in butter like that. Like who? What are you doing?
bread.
Popcorn,
You know what's
Popcorn,
what's
popcorn.
actually
bagels, bagels.
You know-
Bagels.
What else?
Literally any bread.
You know what's actually a pro tip for lobster dipping your lobster in butter? You gotta cut it up and not cut it up into pieces, but to take the piece that you're gonna dip and cut a bunch of divots into it and get a lot of surface area. So when you dip it in the
This is
butter,
science.
it retains the butter.
It really holds
'Cause if
on
you
to
don't, yeah, because if it's smooth on the outside, the butter just falls right off, and then you don't get a lot of butter. But if you create like a lobster mop, a lop, and then you mop up the butter with the lobster. Then it becomes much more sticky, and then you get a good amount of butter on your bite.
That hits different.
Yeah, you just went so much deeper on the technique of lobster bakes than I ever thought we would on this podcast. I have to say, though, I got to change gears. We can't talk about this bake without paying regards to the legend Skip VanDyke, who was
the birthday boy.
Oh my God!
Oh, he was in
having
his element, man. He was
time.
having a really fun time. You know, all of his friends were there. All the lifeguard buds from over the years came down to the house. He was definitely living large.
Oh, that makes me so
downing
happy.
White Claws like a fraternity brother.
Do those drink White Claws?
Reliving the glory days.
I don't know. Do they? Do fraternity brothers drink White Claws, or is it sorority girls?
I feel like it's
sorority girls.
I think everybody drinks them.
exactly.
They're just good.
Yeah, they're good. I don't
They're
even
just
care.
a good drink.
We're not here to
Nobody even
label-
knows what kind of alcohol's in there. It's just liquid.
That's another thing. Like, yeah, it's spiked seltzer, but it doesn't taste like vodka. What is it?
No, I think it's grain
Doesn't taste
alcohol
like anything.
or like what's it,
grain
rye liquor or something. Hey, whatever,
that's-
it just works. You don't got to worry about
That
it.
sounds
it
nasty.
just works. You're right.
Sponsoring Hot
Just-
Boy Summer.
Hot boy.
Hot
White
boy
Claw.
summer.
Hot Boy Summer. It's a
It
sponsor.
just works. Kind of like my draft strategy.
Ooh,
Nice.
solid
He was
transition,
waiting
Rob.
for that one.
That gave me chills.
Ooh, yeah.
You're gonna keep that going?
You know
Keep
it's
it going,
true.
Rob.
I don't really have any other information to back that up. I was just kind of making a claim. That's it.
We're going to hear
Perfect.
plenty about your draft strategy later on, but for now, once again, Skip VanDyke, happy birthday. And, we're just adding sponsors every week. White Claw, official sponsor of the Hot Boy Summer of Unqualified.
Catch me drinking White Claws at Taco Bell at 2 a.m.
And the other brand that Rob brought too. That's another sponsor.
Bon Vive. Live Mas.
Live
Bon
Mas.
Vive.
I feel like that's a gettable sponsor. We should actually reach out.
Hopefully they're not
I feel like
listening.
they need you more than you need them.
Okay, so this episode is our tier matching draft strategy, which might sound complicated and crazy, but we're going to walk you through it, so don't worry. But we need to start with just an overview of draft prep and the preparation you take leading up to the fantasy season. And, I feel like we talk about food every week, Scott.
Yep.
So this is the only way we can really do it. Think of your draft prep like creating a nice pasta dinner. So, Scott, what's the most basic level of pasta dinner you could think of that we can kind of draw a parallel to with the draft strategy? What do you think?
Can we do really quick? Can we do some power rankings of our top pastas? Because I'm going to say it's between bow ties and penne for me. I
I like rigatoni.
rigatoni's good. It's just thick. I like that
I'm a
too,
rigatoni
actually.
man myself. I like fusilli too. I like it when it's a little bit twisted.
Ooh.
Top noodle though, and this is going to be a sleeper pick, maybe
Don't
a
say
little
spaghetti.
bit low key. Gemelli. That's the number one.
Gemelli.
What is that one?
I gotta
That
look
is-
that up. Yeah, hold on.
Which one is that one? Describe it for me, Frank.
It's like two cylinders, right? And they kind of go into helix a little bit. It's small. It's kind of like a fusilli, but it's like
I don't know
it's
what.
not as
Oh,
it's
yeah,
not as
yeah.
ribbed for her pleasure as you think it should be, but it's close. It's on the way.
These are great. Wow. Yeah. Why isn't
I'm getting
there
mixed
certain
emotions
pastas
from
taste
this
better?
description here. This is
I
great.
don't know how to
Yeah.
feel about this noodle anymore, guys.
I don't. I'm never gonna eat that again. But it looks. Yeah. Thanks. Glad I asked that question. Right. Wait, Rob, you didn't say. Did you? Are you gonna say spaghetti?
I feel like a thick penne.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you were
Well,
gonna say
that's
spaghetti, I was
that's
gonna
rigatoni.
smack you.
That's that rigatoni boy. That's my favorite.
Thick
I like
boy,
the
yeah.
short rigatoni, the one that's like
Half.
it's
Like
yeah,
half the
it's
size?
like- exactly.
What's rigatoni again?
It's like the wide penne, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like better penne.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Why
See, I
is
just
it
think,
great for
I think it's
sauce?
interesting that no one said spaghetti.
No, spaghetti
Yeah.
sucks. If anyone says
Dude,
spaghetti,
it's
spaghetti
low
does
tier.
I will
suck.
find
It's low
you.
tier.
It's terrible. It's like, hey,
Spaghetti
in
is
the-
like-
in the spirit of tiering, it's like tier D or 4.
Yeah.
It's like the least effortful pasta. Like you rolled out the dough, cut it in lines, and you're like, that's enough. I'm done.
yeah, exactly.
I also don't like how you have to
Spaghetti-
cook it and like it comes out of the pot
Oh, it gets all stuck together.
and it's stuck
Oh.
together, and you have to push it down. Like, come on, just get in there.
Just get in there.
I actually really have a huge problem with spaghetti.
Oh, good.
I don't think I can even get into it though because we need to keep things moving.
So next
But I
time,
just wanna
guys,
make it
we'll
known.
ask Scott,
I just wanna make it known
ask
for a
Rob about
later
his spaghetti
date.
phobia.
I like that.
I just want to make it known for a later date that I have a massive problem with spaghetti.
Spaghetti, consider yourself warned. Rob is coming for you.
And also angel hair, like you're in there too, buddy. Don't think you're not different. You're the same thing.
Yep. So Scott, what's the angel hair level of draft prep? What are we talking about here?
I like how that was a good transition too. You guys are on fuego. That's so fire with your transitions. Anyway, so creating a pasta dinner, the first level of prep is where you're doing a little prep. You do like 1 or 2 mock drafts before your draft when you get your position, but you're really not looking into a lot. Maybe you listen to this podcast once or twice, but you don't listen every week, which you should at Unqualified FF. It's just using box pasta and cheap sauce. Like they add sugar to it. It's a little sugary. It's weird. You don't know why it's sugary, and it's like a cheap off-brand. You know what I mean? Like that's the pasta dinner we were talking about.
And you know what? Like at the end of the day, that's still a pasta dinner. You're still doing a little bit of prep. Sure. And remember, there's always someone out there that can't boil water correctly that like burns the pan because they don't know what they're doing. So at least you're not that guy. That's what I got to keep in mind. And then I would say like level 2, like sort of let's take this up a notch. This is where I think most people should lie, and for good reason, because you don't want to overthink it too much either. You find a specific, trustworthy resource, kind of like us. It doesn't need to be us, but we would prefer it to be us, right? The difference between us and like some of those more major sites like, ESPN or Yahoo or even like some of the major media outlets like Bleacher Report, right? The people that write those articles, and this is like almost a ding on us, but it's kind of a plus, they have to worry about what their bosses are going to say and what the athletes themselves are going to say. So they're like worried about stepping on toes. So that's like that sugar that they add into the sauce. We don't need to do that, right? We're just high quality, top notch,
H2O.
like Rayo's sauce you get in the store, or even better, I feel like what we really are, we're the Italian grandma hookup that has leftover sauce for us. Use 2 days later.
Oh, hell yeah.
Heat it back up. It's even better the second day. That's Unqualified right there. We don't need to add sugar to our stuff because it just hits different. That's it. That's
different. Hot boy summer, it hits different.
That right there, that's some high quality H2O.
That's nice reference there. Level 3, we're talking about listening to like this episode. We're going to talk about just a little preview here. We're going to talk about tiers. We're going to do our own tiers. We're going to talk about in the context of draft strategy, who you should be taking and what tier and why per position. But this is where you get inspired and actually do your own tiers. So that's like level 3 where you're making that homemade sauce. You're doing your own kind of thing. You have total control over the makeup of your team.
Oh, hell yeah.
I love that. You want a little bit of like, you add like the Parmesan cheese rind into the sauce.
Ooh,
just
you
because
dirty dog.
Because you can. Maybe you sprinkle a little balsamic in there. I love that. That's like, I feel like the sweet spot for
that's
draft
the hot
prep.
boy summer right there.
That's what we both try to do. It pays off in varying levels, but I would say this is level 4, and this is like doing too much. This is what the teens like to call extra right here. That would be, I would say, making your own pasta.
Don't be so extra.
Making your own pasta, or in the fantasy equivalent would be like making your own individual rankings, ranking every single player. Like, look, sure, it's great to do both of those things once. Like, you probably learn a lot by doing rankings. You probably learn a lot by making pasta one time. But I feel like if you're just trying to sit down for a weeknight pasta dinner, you don't want to, like, roll out some pasta dough and use a pasta machine. Like, that's great for one time, but it's not a go-to, right? And you're going to get exhausted doing that, right? So, fantasy-wise, if you're trying to pick between Mike Williams and Calvin Ridley and rank them definitively, it's much harder to do that than just say, you know what, on one team, I'll take Calvin. On one team, I'll take Mike. And I'll go with the Ronzoni or the Berea pasta, just so I'm good to go.
And guess what? One of these guys, like, hope it doesn't happen, knock on wood, but you could do all the prep and the draft strategy in the world. One of these guys might get hurt for 10 games next year, and then all of a sudden, your rankings go out the window. So
exactly.
Anything could happen any given Sunday.
Love that. So, Frank, let's open up to you over there. What level of draft prep do you think you usually go to here?
Yeah, so to try to protect my my pride a little bit, I'm gonna remove myself from the situation and try to change my approach to this entire analogy. So I think while you guys are making pasta, I'm making ramen over here, right? Because I'm not doing anything close to what you guys are going on. Like day before the draft, day of the draft, I'll look online a little bit, try to see what's going on, see who's even available to draft that year, because I'm paying no attention at all to what the pasta making public is doing out here. But my my viewpoint is like, if we're all getting together for a pasta dinner and we're all bringing some stuff, right? How are you going to stand out from the rest of the pack? If we're all bringing pasta and red sauce, right? Everyone's going to blend together. So you got to switch it up, right? So one of the things that I think is the most interesting part about playing with the same guys over the course of your life, you kind of figure out how they're going to be drafting. So I'm playing this a little more against the people I'm going against than the actual players available. Taking a poker perspective to it.
Interesting. Like chess, not
I love
checkers.
that.
So
Kind
you're
of.
talking about us. You're literally talking about
totally,
drafting
dude. I'm in your
against us.
head, Scotty. I've been there for years.
I will say we were in my
Rent-free.
backyard,
Oh my
and
God.
you and I were 1 and 2, and you drafted Le'Veon,
Yeah.
and I drafted Todd Gurley last year. That's all. That's all.
Hey,
That's all I'll say.
Let me give the listeners
Eat
some
your ramen
context
there.
real
it's
quick.
ramen.
So Frank is actually an OG League veteran. Like, he's been around the block. I think he entered the OG League the same year as Scott. I think that's pretty positive.
That
Pretty
sounds
positive
about
as it
right.
worked.
Yeah, I'm pretty
Sounds right.
sure.
Yeah.
Honestly, you've been in the league so long, I don't even remember how long you've been in the league, which is how you know you've been in the league for a while. Frank he really grew as a fantasy player year after year, to the point where now every time we draft, me and Scott, after the draft, we go, oh God, like,
Look at
how
Frank's
did we
team.
let Frank get that team? Like,
Every year, it's like, damn it, how did he do that again?
See, and the worst part about it is I'm coming in with no fundamental information at all about the players or anything they can do.
With your homemade ramen.
well, again, but it comes down to your approach,
Purely
though.
numbers based.
What, exactly. He's super like numbers based, so he's looking at all that data, and then he's just waiting for us to make our mistakes. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Frank is the value god. Like, he just mops up whoever's left in each round, to the point where we realized we overthought some guys, and they all wound up on Frank's roster.
That's
feel
what I try to
the
do.
best
And
way he goes about
I'm
it.
shameless about taking utility players like kickers and defensemen way before they possibly should be, so I can get the highest fucking points possible out of those categories. So even if I make bad picks on those main leaders everyone normally totally rips me on, if I can have my lower third of the bracket constantly performing, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
See,
I love it. And honestly, like, that's like level 2 or like 1 that we just talked about. But that's like the value of not overthinking it, because like sometimes Sean and I just beat our heads into the ground like, oh my God, like Calvin Ridley or Mike Williams, like who do you think? And then we're like differing, and it's like, I don't know, just take one guy in one league and one guy in the other. Who cares?
Rob, I got to say this. I'm going to use Frank as your test model for your growth over the next year. This is the
Okay.
This is the model for you. You need to start psychoanalyzing each member of the league, and that's your path forward.
well, to compare your meals against my meal, so basically, you guys brought pasta, you brought ramen. What I'm bringing to the table is I just dumped a whole package of sugar into a bowl, and then I put Lucky Charms on top of it, and then I just came in and I took taco powder seasoning and I
That's
just
how you
dumped
say
it
it?
in a bowl, and I poured some milk, whole milk in there, and I just mixed it up. So I got really sweet and then really spicy and salty, and I put it all together.
Rob's got a
That's
bowl full of
my-
sour straws and is just lapping up that shit.
Are you
Yeah.
okay? Do you need to talk?
There's a definitive lack of substance there that I'm just going to leave unremarked upon, I think.
And so to make the parallels to that is basically what I'm doing is I'm looking at the sweetest and the spiciest players out there, and I'm just going after them hard and fast and slapping them all together however I can grab them, and then hopefully it works out. But
Slaps. That's
Sometimes-
slaps.
sometimes I end up with a sour stomach at the end.
And by sometimes you mean every time.
Every time.
Yes.
50% of the time it hurts every time.
Damn, we
Exactly.
just did it
Beat you
at the same-
to it, man.
We just did it at the same
Time.
time. There you go.
All right, before we wrap up, I want to leave with one more food analogy here, and we're sticking with the script here, right? For this podcast, we're using Scotty J's official 2019 positional tiers. He put a lot of work into this, so I gotta
listen.
ask you, Frank, you took a peek. Scott, you obviously formed them. Rob, you probably glanced at the doc and typed some crazy comments somewhere. If Scott's tiers were a homemade sauce, what would be the defining flavors? What's
Ooh.
coming out here? What do you feel when you bite in?
I don't know, man. I feel like they're a little bit chunky. You know what I mean? There's robustness to it. It's well spiced for sure. You know, He didn't crush the garlic. He loosely chopped it.
Oh,
Nice.
so it's a little bit of like a
It's a loose affiliation
almost
with it.
yeah, exactly.
I'll tell you what should be the defining flavor is damn vodka. It's a vodka sauce, man.
Ooh.
It's a homemade vodka sauce. And I put some Tito's in it for you.
Nice.
The only way to make a vodka sauce is homemade. You can't get that store bought. Doesn't
Yeah.
work.
It's true.
That hits different.
It actually does. Make sure you burn off the alcohol out there, people. I've eaten it when you don't burn it off, and it is quite an experience. Not in a good way. Not in a good way.
I want to hear about that more. We'll mark that down. We're going to talk about two different spaghetti and then also that experience for you, Sean.
Yes, pasta is really a big topic for us.
Very contentious.
It's taking us a while to get to
Right?
it. But,
Yeah, lots of charged opinions about noodles.
Oh, yeah.
Charged up.
So it's very garlicky sauce, chunky garlicky. Is that what we're going for
I
here?
think so. Throw some vodka in there. I think we got a really good mix.
Ooh.
How else do you make vodka sauce? Do you put like heavy cream in it?
Yes, it's literally like
oh yeah.
I feel like it's just red sauce, vodka, and heavy cream.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's weird how it's red sauce, milk, and liquor, though. It's kind of an
but
odd
it
combination
works.
to think it would work.
That's gross now that you say it.
Sounds like
that.
something I would make.
Yeah, it does.
In your bowl.
It's like I'm trying to make dinner, and there's 4 things in my fridge. I guess they're all going in the pot together.
Add some ketchup.
That may have been how it was created.
So yeah, make your own sauce. Make your own sauce, people. And always remember to burn off the alcohol. You're welcome. Okay, so this is one of those things that this is our round/tier matching strategy. It's one of those things that it would be much more confusing for me to try to explain. So we're just going to kind of get into it, and you're going to figure it out as we go. It's the only way to do it, and it's not that complicated. Basically, what we're doing is we're going to go through all the quarterbacks right now, and we're going to talk about the certain tiers of guys that we kind of judge them to be in the top tier, second tier, third tier, and then the bottom tier. All the starting caliber guys like Joe Flacco, like he won't be on a tier because I don't think we care about Joe Flacco. Am I right, Scott?
You are correct there. No offense, Joe Flacco.
All
Sorry.
right, good. So what we're going to do is so we'll talk about tier A, tier 1, and this is the top tier of quarterbacks. These are the guys that go in rounds 1 to 6, and with quarterbacks it's really rounds like 4 to 6. Right. But this tier is Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Andrew Luck, Deshaun Watson, and Matt Ryan. Some of these guys might be going a little bit later per ranking, but as far as ADP goes, they might be going in rounds 1 to 6. Scott, are we taking a quarterback in round 1 to 6? And if we are, who's it going to be? What do you think?
So for strategy, like we talked about it a little bit, we'll continue to talk about it before you get into your actual draft with our mock drafts that are coming up soon. I'm staying away from a quarterback in rounds 1 through 6, basically 4 through 6. Not Rodgers, not Mahomes. There's always going to be regression for those guys. Matt Ryan, we talked about him in previous weeks, up and down years constantly. Andrew Luck and Deshaun Watson are 2 guys that really intrigue me, and you could probably get them at the tail end of round 6, maybe into round 7 that you're looking at, which wouldn't be like a tier B guy, but let's say you have 5 solid starters, you have 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and a solid flex guy like Chris Carson or Mark Ingram to fill that flex spot. I could see you taking Andrew Luck and Deshaun Watson if they fall that far, but for the most part, I'd rather stay away from quarterback. Again, we talked about it at length, but the difference between the 1st and 10th guy on a per-game basis is so minimal compared to running backs or wide receivers where it makes sense to capitalize on the gains that you can get and the value that you can get for those guys. So Andrew Luck and Deshaun Watson are the 2 guys that I would highlight out of that tier A, but other than that, tier B and C is like where you really want to get the meat and potatoes for quarterbacks.
Yeah, and like if Mahomes falls into like late round 5, then I would really have to think about it just because he's so much fun to watch. But I agree. I think I'm kind of staying away. And as much as I love Deshaun Watson and Matt Ryan, and actually all those guys in that tier, like the value is not as great because in this next tier we have 3 guys, I think, really 2 that I think really are ready to pop off here. But Carson Wentz and Baker Mayfield, if I can get one of those guys in like round 8 or 9, or you can get them later. Carson Wentz right now is going in around like 11. Mm-hmm. If you can get one of those guys there in the next tier, which is around 7 through 12, I'm ecstatic there because I think their ceiling is just as high and their floor is just a little bit lower than that top tier. The other guys in that group, Ben Roethlisberger, Cam Newton, who we've talked about a lot as a guy that we're kind of down on, and then Drew Brees, the ageless wonder there in that second tier. Scott, I feel like we're going to talk about this till the end of time. Why are people overlooking Wentz? And honestly, kind of overlooking Mayfield now. I thought his ADP was going to be much higher than it is.
I agree. They're going again, round 10, 11. So this is squarely in our round 7 through 12 tier B guys. It's not even close to a comparison of who I'd rather have between Cam Newton and then like Carson Wentz or Cam Newton and Baker Mayfield. We have like a would you rather at the end of this, so we'll get into some of those specifics and like A or B. But Baker, it's funny. Like in the last month, I've seen his ADP and like in mock drafts go up and down and up and down. And he's such a polarizing player off and on the field, but either guys love him or they hate him. They're not going to take him. It's really rare for Baker to go exactly where he should be drafted in ADP. But Carson Wentz, I don't get it. He was going to be league MVP before he got hurt. He spent numerous hours and millions of dollars on his body this offseason, and the Eagles clearly like what they see and what he's done this offseason to keep his body healthy and like learn how to take tackles, how to slide. You've seen some reports on that. And they paid him a huge extension, one of the highest for quarterbacks. I think it was like 4 years for, $110 million or something like that? I might be off on that.
They ponied up. He secured the bag. That's it.
Exactly. So Wentz, he's a guy that I think will pop off again. Baker, 27 touchdowns as a rookie, more mouths to feed now, better running game, better offensive line, or similar offensive line, better defense, new coaching staff. It's going to be some challenges there, but if you have both of those, this is where I'm taking quarterbacks. Around 7 through 12, I'm taking Wentz, Baker, Breeze, one of those guys in this spot.
Yeah, and the biggest reason you're going to see when we do the other positions, listeners out there, round 7 to 12 is where the running backs and wide receivers start to dry up. So that's really the value of quarterbacks here is so high. That's exactly where I'm taking my number one, I would say. And then I'm taking my second quarterback maybe in round 13 to 17, which is this tier C. I might even wait till later and wait till a guy that might not even be drafted. But in this third tier, we got a bunch of guys here. Russell Wilson, who I believe belongs in the tier above, but for some reason is getting, again, way overlooked. He's probably the ideal second quarterback this year. Jared Goff, another guy in that tier. And then I know you're a big Mitch Trubisky guy, Scott. I also am kind of partial to Dick Prescott, the if you use the South African accent there. And don't sleep on Kyler Murray. If he is Mike Vick 2.0, he's going to be very valuable as a quarterback 2 or a low-end quarterback 1. And if he can throw the ball as well as he did in college, the ceiling is remarkable for him. It's just that we have an unestablished floor. So that's really the risk here. But if he's your second quarterback, that's kind of the guy that you want as your second quarterback, because if he flops, you drop him.
Exactly. And Russell Wilson and Jared Goff, are we forgetting all of a sudden that Jared Goff was the 7th best quarterback last year?
Yeah, I think
he was before week, I think 15, 16, 17, where he kind of dropped off in away games, and people were saying oh, he's like Big Ben and not good in away games. I don't care. He was number 3 for a while, quarterback wise. He came out he didn't come out of nowhere. The year before, did really well in his second year under McVay, his first year under McVay rather. But he's a guy perpetually overlooked. Russell Wilson, his ratio of touchdowns to completions last year was pretty remarkable and kind of unsustainable. So I kind of get the not necessarily overlooking him, but underdrafting him, undervaluing him. But again, second quarterback for Russell Wilson, I'll take it. He was still top 12 last year. Mitch Trubisky had a huge breakout year last year, and it was kind of cut off by injury. But rushing quarterback there, I'll take him any day of the week as my second quarterback. So you're looking I'm looking for all my mocks with a Carson Wentz or Baker Mayfield as my starter. And then 2 or 3 rounds later, I'm taking Mitch Trubisky, Jared Goff, Russell Wilson, maybe even Kyler Murray or Phillip Rivers as a steady second option. And then you're looking at tier D, guys like Kirk Cousins, who's barely getting drafted. I would, that's crazy to me because he had 30 touchdowns last year, and I think he was number 11 quarterback wise. Josh Allen, who has some chops running the ball. Jimmy G, who's coming back, but he's only had 10 starts to his name. So Lamar Jackson, those are some guys to look at in the last pick of your draft. If you want to move up your defensive kicker to rounds 15, 16, and then take one of these guys in round 17, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I would say that tier D, that last tier there, and you can include Jameis Winston, Sam Darnold in there, guys that can have a huge year throwing the ball. That they're definitely guys to consider. And I think the last guy you mentioned, Lamar Jackson, is going to be so good this year that I might consider taking him as my third quarterback if he's still there.
Why
because
not?
Scott, you want to guess his rushing attempts per game when he was the full-time starter? Just guess.
19.
It was 17 rushing attempts per game as a quarterback.
That's
a quarterback.
insane.
That was like top 5 in the league for all players. So that's what you're getting. You're getting a running back as a quarterback, and you get a little added bonus with his throwing. It doesn't get much better than that. That's a big floor. I feel like he's a guy that's also getting underdrafted right now.
Barely.
Like almost like criminally underdrafted. He's definitely a guy that I would take if I even wait forever and I wind up with Jared Goff as my starter and I pair him with Lamar Jackson. I'm kind of comfortable
great
with
about that.
And I don't have to spend any draft capital on quarterback, and I get a nice floor with Goff and a huge ceiling with Jackson.
Right.
I'm with that.
And Josh Allen too. He was top 10 a couple weeks in a row. He was he was actually top 5 if you want to look at a per game basis. Like with rushing the ball, he had 100 yards rushing a couple of games in a row when he was a starter. Crazy stats for Josh Allen. They just added weapons for him. They added Cole Beasley, a safety valve. They added John Brown, take the top of defenses, wide receiver threat. They just drafted a running back to help bolster the running game, or a couple running backs in free agency and draft. So like Josh Allen, I think he might do better than Lamar Jackson this year because Lamar, I think he's more apt to get hurt. But yeah, either of these guys, Sam Darnold, rookie last year, I would take them all day. It's my second quarterback.
Yeah. It's a good time to be a quarterback at the end of the day. Let's do some quick would you rathers. We got 4 of these. I'm going to give you 2 and then you give me 2, right? And these are tough. I'm going to give you the tough ones to start. Would you rather have Andrew Luck or Deshaun Watson? They're kind of in the same tier, right? So now we're going into that making your own pasta a little bit, that ranking. But if you had to pick for a big, the team you care the most about, who are you picking there? Luck or Watson?
I'm picking. It's a really tough one. I'll give the nod to Luck, actually, because second year under new head coach Frank Reich, proved a ton last year. I think he was the comeback player of the year. The sky's the limit. That's his now floor. That's his base. Like he's probably not going to do worse than that at this point with the second year of that coaching staff. Eric Ebron and Jack Doyle as really good, tight end 1 and 2 options, 1-2 punch. They just drafted. I always forget his name from Ohio State. Paris Campbell.
Oh yeah.
In the second round, they got Devin Funchess, Paris Campbell. They have a ton of weapons for him and a good running game. That's the best part. Is like the offensive line and the running game is huge. So I would take Luck over Watson.
Okay, interesting. And then I'm going to give you another one that's going to break your heart, Scott. Baker Mayfield or Carson Wentz? Who's your guy there?
I'm going to give the nod. Damn. I'm going to give the nod to
Just say
Wentz
Baker.
Slightly.
Ooh,
very slightly.
You're joining
because
me.
the
Let's
ADP,
go.
again, Baker's getting, I think it's weird his draft is going up and down, but there's bound to be a guy that takes him in round 7 or 8, and that's just too early for me. I'm waiting until round 9, 10 for him, and I think Wentz is going perfectly there. And he was an MVP candidate 2 years ago. He's kind of proven it a little bit more, so I would take Wentz. Now for you, 2 would you rather's Dak Prescott or Russell Wilson?
I love the contrarian pick with Dak. I feel like he gets so much hate, but he's sneakily a good fantasy quarterback. But it's got to be Russell Wilson. It's the only answer here. He's a legit fantasy starter that you can get in the 13th round right now. So that's the answer. Russell Wilson is your guy.
Love that. And then 2 rushing quarterbacks, 2 more, Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen?
I would say Lamar Jackson, just based on the fact that the Ravens design runs for him as opposed to Josh Allen, who's kind of outside of structure, and the fact that the Ravens are a more competent team and a more competent offense. I have yet to see the Bills be any type of consistent on a fantasy basis. So I'm picking Lamar Jackson.
Love that. The only pick out of those 4 that I actually if you asked me beforehand, I would have thought I would have said Baker and Deshaun Watson, and that you would have said Dak. The only one that made sense was Lamar Jackson there. But we made good arguments for all of them.
Nice.
So. With Moss.
And meanwhile, Frank is off the screen, but he is continuing to psychoanalyze us. Scott, how do you feel right now under the scope?
Not great, but we'll talk about running backs. We'll kind of scramble them up a little bit, mess them up.
Yeah, like that. I like the strategy. Sabotaging
each other for years. All right, now that we've talked about quarterbacks, let's talk about running back tiers. So obviously, it's a bit of a different draft strategy for these positions. Running backs, you really want to stack up on them in the first 6 rounds. Same with wide receivers. You want to have in my opinion, 3 solid starters, running backs and wide receivers wise, and then you go into quarterback and tight end. That's just my opinion. Sean, I know we're actually pretty similar with that. Wait on QB and tight end.
Oh yeah.
So we want to we're going to gloss over tier A because it's all the same guys you've heard a million times. Saquon Barkley, Zeke, if his holdout doesn't last, Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara. Those guys are the top 4. Take them in the top 4. Feel good about it. However, a quick aside now, Le'Veon Bell and Melvin Gordon are 5 and 6 respectively in ADP, followed by the first wide receiver, Devontae Adams, for the most part. The guy that I'd rather have, and I don't know if you agree with me, Sean, is David Johnson over both of these guys. So David
1000%.
Johnson is early second rounder here, like 10th, 11th, 12th ADP wise. He, again, off year last year, but we've talked about it at Ignacium, like all the changes in the offseason, Kyler Murray, Cliff Kingsbury, this guy's going to be a top 5 talent, and I'd much rather have him than Le'Veon Bell, who I was reading something about the pace of Adam Gase's offenses in the past 3-4 years. It's one of the slowest paced offenses that Miami has had. And Pittsburgh, when Le'Veon was there, was one of the fastest paced offenses, which he thrives on. He gets quick carries. He learns which holes to go into. He gets quick dump off passes. So that's gonna screw him up at big time, I think, Le'Veon. And then Melvin Gordon's holding out. So rather have David Johnson.
Yeah, I think we saw David Johnson's absolute floor last year, and it's not that scary. It's RB9. So I mean, I can handle that. But obviously, he's not going to end up there. I think he's going to be much closer to like RB2 or 3 because he's going to, even if the Cliff Kingsbury offense doesn't work, he's going to face a lot less 8-man fronts because there's the threat of the pass, even if it's not as successful, right? So I love David Johnson. I agree. That second tier, like Le'Veon Bell, Melvin Gordon, and let's throw in James Conner and Todd Gurley there. You're going to have to take one of those guys before you want to because you want to make sure you get a running back in round 1 or 2. So I would say this is the year to have a top 4 pick. It really is because if you get in there, you're guaranteed one of those top 4 guys. If you get 5, you take David Johnson, even though his ADP is a little bit lower. Outside of that group, I don't feel great about any of these guys, and we could even include Joe Mixon there. I don't feel great about the Bengals, so I don't know what I think about Mixon. I don't know. I would much rather. I mean, I'm kind of lucky. I already know I have the 3rd overall pick in the OG league. Oh no, in the Brady Bros league. So I know I'm going to get one of those top 4 running backs. I don't have to worry about it. But if you have a later first round pick, it's going to get a little dicey. You might have to reach for a running back in round 1 because you might not get a good one in round 2. So let's look at this second tier here. This is where, these guys they have the potential to break out. Obviously, they're in the second tier. This is rounds 3 and 4. Like I would say very early round 3 all the way to the end of round 4. But you're really banking on a lot of things breaking right. The top of that tier to me is unanimous. It's Dalvin Cook and Nick Chubb, and to me, they're getting drafted in this range, but to me, those are second round picks. So I think if you miss out on one of those, top 4 running backs, I think one of those 2 guys are the guys you want on your team. Dalvin Cook, Nick Chubb. Yeah,
and strategy-wise, I'd much rather have a DeAndre Hopkins and Michael Thomas in my first 2 picks and then fill it with a Nick Chubb as my 3rd pick or even a Devontae Freeman, Marlon Mack, Aaron Jones in this range, then reach for a James Conner who, love the guy, he's a great guy off the field, but he's kind of a system running back. When you plugged in Jalen Samuels, he almost did just as well as James Conner if you look at statistically. They had very similar stats, so the offensive line is really good. Big Ben's is going to blow the top of the defenses, so it's going to open up a lot of running lanes like James Conner. I don't know. I'd rather get a solid starting wide receiver than have to draft one in round 3 or 4 like a Julian Edelman or AJ Green that there's question marks. I'd rather take a running back here. Dalvin Cook, Nick Chubb, of course, but also Devontae Freeman, Marlon Mack, and Aaron Jones. But looking at the next tier, so this is rounds 5 and 6. Typically you want at least 2 running backs already, or one of those guys, or a top 5 guy. In these rounds, you're looking at Damian Williams, Kerryon Johnson, Chris Carson. They've had success last year. They showed flashes. They haven't done it consistently, though. But those 3 guys in these rounds, I feel really good about. Sean, who else do you feel good about in these rounds, 5 through 8, where you're getting a flex guy or maybe a fringe running back 2?
Yeah, I would say I love Chris Carson. I feel like if I take a top 4 running back, I can kind of wait till round 5, and I'll take Chris Carson as my RB2. I'm fine with that. I also really like Mark Ingram. We talked about him last week, or 2 weeks ago rather, and like, the situation could not be any better for this guy. I know he's getting up there in age, but this is a guy that I feel like year after year I wind up trying to trade for because I realized too late how valuable he is. He's just a solid running back. He catches the ball. I mean, I think he's about to have a really good year next to Lamar Jackson. So I really like him. And then I am willing rather, in this range, like say around 6 or 7, to gamble on a rookie like Miles Sanders or David Montgomery. If they're the first guy on my bench and they're a guy like Miles Sanders who might be given the keys to the offense in Philadelphia, that's great for me. I'll take that all day. And I also like Tariq Cohen here. You know I'm partial. Give me some Tariq Cohen.
I love Cohen too.
That first guy off your bench, that's where you want these guys because you're not counting on them every week. But if they explode, all of a sudden you're looking at like a possible league winner.
I was just going to say, you don't want these guys to be a starter. Like, just what you're going to say. Like, you don't want them to be your starting flex every week in and week out if they're a rookie like Montgomery or Sanders or even Darrell Henderson. Like, these are the first guys off your bench that could be home run hits. But and then you look at like the next tier, like rounds 9 and up, it's pretty much handcuffs, like high-end handcuffs. So we basically, like, we wanted to cover the starters and who we would pick in which round. But, you know, rounds 9 and 10 and 11, 12.
Latavius
like those
Murray.
Latavius Murray. You're taking like quarterbacks
Austin
and tight
Eckler.
ends there and kind of filling out the rest of your roster at that point. Austin Eckler.
Ooh, we got some good would you rathers. We got to get into these, Scott. This is like we're trying to put our minds in a pretzel here. So we're gonna end this with a couple would you rathers here. We have a lot. We'll pick out some good ones. Scott, this is gonna make you very mad. This one. Would you rather have Melvin Gordon or Le'Veon Bell?
Le'Veon, just for the fact that he's hungry to play again, and you know Melvin like has a lot going on in terms of injury history, and like it's just a weird situation with the contract disputes here. So I'd rather take Le'Veon, even though the pace of the offense is going to be much slower. I think he'll still be a focal point. He's 27. He's still pretty young with less wear and tear on his tires, so to speak.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
Next one, we kind of talked about these guys, but Nick Chubb or Dalvin Cook, who do you got there?
Dalvin Cook, but it's very close. The only reason I would say, I mean, we talked a little bit in that Pickles episode about the whole Kareem Hunt situation. It's not enough to scare me off of taking Nick Chubb. I've taken him in, like, I would say probably 85% of my mock drafts so far, but we know Dalvin is going to be the guy the whole year as long as he doesn't get hurt. So I think Dalvin, especially based on how he looked at down the stretch last year, I think that offense is going to be more run heavy than the Browns are. So I think that's like the kind of like the tipping point. It's very close though.
Interesting.
All right, Scott, Joe Mixon or Todd Gurley?
God, I hate this one. Honestly, Todd Gurley, he's an insane talent. I really am nervous about his knees, but if you're looking at like him or Joe Mixon, especially with the news that AJ Green just got hurt and will be out for a couple of games to start the season, which just hurts everything in that offense, which is already depleted, I'll take Todd Gurley. Honestly. I mean,
I'm with you on that. I'm not a big Joe Mixon guy, so
yeah, not anymore. I mean, I was like kind of forcing myself into it. I'd rather have Dalvin Cook than Joe Mixon. But next one, Lenny Fournette or Marlon Mack?
You could put a lot of guys opposite Lenny Fournette. I'm not taking him. I mean,
yeah, I'm with you.
Marlon Mack is going around his ADP, but there's some guys going well after Leonard Fournette that I'd rather have on my team because I don't think the Jaguars are going to be very good. I think they're going to be just a mess. He's also always hurt.
Yep.
And it's just a nightmare to deal with. Like, I still don't know if Marlon Mack is a very talented football player, but his situation is lucrative enough to just, you have to take him.
Yep.
He's going to score the ball a ton because he's just a product of that awesome high-octane offense in Indianapolis.
I agree with that.
All right, let's look at a couple guys that are breakout candidates this year. Damian Williams or Kerryon Johnson?
That's a tough one. I'm still going to take Damian Williams. Now, the offense is still intact with Tyreek Hill. I was going to say Tyreek Hill, like Tyreek Cohen. Tyreek Hill, no suspension. We talked about it last week or 2 weeks ago. You know, whatever you think of the guy, he still stretches defenses, and that helps a ton with Damian Williams. Damian Williams averaged like 22 points a game when he was starting. And yeah, they got Carlos Hyde. He doesn't scare me in terms of starting caliber. So I like Kerryon Johnson, but again, that Lions team just is boring.
Yeah, but they did just cut Theo Riddick. Keep that in mind.
Oh,
interesting.
interesting.
It does help. It helps the case a little bit, but I agree. I'm a big Williams guy. I think the sample size is going to scare some people off, but again, you're buying the starting running back on the Kansas City Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't get much better.
Last one. This is we could do this quickly because we like both these guys, but Chris Carson or Mark Ingram. The last one we'll do.
I would say Carson, but that could change. I like both these guys as a low end RB2 or as my flex guy. I think you're sitting pretty if you have either one. Okay, let's look at the wide receivers, and we got to start with. Actually, this is kind of like symmetrical. I like this. A nice top 4, tier A, and it's a bigger tier than 4, but there's really a definitive top 4 for me this year. I think for you too, Scott. Devontae Adams, Michael Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins, Julio Jones, in whatever order you so choose to put them. Those are the guys you want. If you're at the end of the first round, you're probably going to snag at least one of those guys, maybe 2 if you're feeling frisky. So definitely the top 4 wide receivers, and guys with the top 4 pick, you have no chance of getting one of these guys on your team unless you use your top 4 pick to pick one. So Scott, what do you think outside of that top 4? What's going on with this top tier wide receivers? Like, let's look at the round 2 guys, because I think that's where it starts to get a little bit interesting.
Yeah, like you got Tyreek Hill, Antonio Brown, Odell, and Juju, basically. Then we'll get into tier B, which is like round 3, start of round 3. But out of those guys, like I hate to say it, but you know what? No, I'd probably take Antonio Brown first because he's tried and true and he's done this before. Odell, honestly, I'm pretty nervous about because there's so many mouths to feed there. Landry's been in the system, Joku's been in the system. It's up to Baker to kind of like it's really up to Baker to make Odell go or not. And when Odell doesn't get targets, he's kind of whiny. And same with Antonio Brown, but I like Brown's, honestly, I like his situation a little bit better because he's the clear number 1 guy. And there's no even like 2B to him, So I'd rather have Antonio Brown out of these guys than maybe Tyreek Hill and then Juju and then Odell in that order. But you're not getting like, tried and true production out of all these guys. These 4 guys, the 4 guys that you mentioned, Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, Julio, and Michael Thomas, with those 5 running backs we just mentioned, like that rounds out round 1 for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you throw David Johnson in, and that's a definitive
top 9 guys.
Top 9, and then you would say probably the last guy might be a running back like Le'Veon Bell to squeeze in there. But I agree. As far as the second round wide receivers go, I actually feel a little bit differently. I'm a little bit nervous about Antonio Brown compared to the rest of the guys, just based on Oakland. It's just you never know what you're going to get. Let's look at tier B though. Scott, who are you targeting in round 3? Because remember, there's 2 running backs we want there. We want Nick Chubb. We want Dalvin Cook, if possible.
Want Marlon Mack, maybe.
Round 3. Maybe Marlon Mack in round 3. But, Scott, if there's a wide receivers tantalizing you in round 3, who are they?
Mike Evans. Evans. Why is he getting drafted so late? He had like 1,500 yards last year. We say this every single year.
Did he lead the league in receiving last year? I think he did.
I'm pretty sure he did.
God. I had him on my team. It was
glorious.
Amazing.
He didn't have that many touchdowns, but that should change now. He's like, again, they lost to Deshaun Jackson. He's a passing QB guru coach. Mike Evans, I'm targeting. Maybe Keenan Allen. Or Tyrell Williams to take targets away. Definitely Robert Woods and Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen. Like, in that order, I would take them, honestly. Adam Thielen's getting undervalued this year, too.
As per usual, this is the perpetually undervalued Hall of Fame for fantasy football. Those 5 guys. Mike Evans, first off, I said last year, if I can get him as my 3rd best player, thank you very much. I'll take the money now. And guess what happened?
You took the
money.
got
Mike Evans in round 3, paired him with my stud running backs, and the rest is history. You know how much I love Keenan Allen because I spent the whole year trying to get him from Rob. Didn't work out.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Still a little sore about it. But again, Adam Thielen, who I know that there's a little bit of downside based on the offensive coordinator change, but look, he was the number 1 overall wide receiver for the first 9 weeks of the season last year.
Yep.
Stephon Diggs, his running mate, who's a stud, and then Robert Woods, who is a late 4th rounder. Can someone explain this to me?
Nope. Mr. Consistency. It's crazy.
Love that guy. I kind of want to that's the dream guest on Unqualified, Robert Woods. Because he just seems like the best guy. He's a great player. He's always overlooked. Nobody thinks of him as a wide receiver 1, but he is.
He is.
And I'm gonna have him on a lot of my teams. I think unless you get to him first, Scott.
I might get.
We're
to
gonna
him
fight
first.
each other.
That's fine with me. I'd rather have all those guys. The other guys that are going in these rounds, Mari Cooper, Julian Edelman, AJ Green. I'm waiting on them.
Yes.
But the other guys that I might even take before those three that I just mentioned, tier C. This is like rounds 5 through 8. Again, you have solid starters, probably 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers. Maybe you got a Pat Mahomes late in round 5, and now you're looking at like a flex guy. Couple guys that here that we can highlight. Allen Robinson, who he hasn't had 1,000 yards in a while, but again, the opportunity there with Mitch Trubisky is tantalizing to me. I can't pass
He was
it up.
frustrating. So frustrating last year.
Frustrating.
Oh my god.
But the upside is like insane to me, and if
It
he's
is.
the first guy off your bench, I'm happy about that. These guys are like maybe starters, fringe starters, but Cooper Kupp, who was off to a great top 11 start before he got hurt. Kenny Galladay, who surpassed 1,000 yards and now is the only guy there. Jarvis Landry, second guy, but again, probably will get 100 catches. Robbie Anderson, Mike Williams. Out of these guys, I'm taking Mike Williams probably first and then the rest. What about you?
Yeah. I love Mike Williams. I kind of hinted at this earlier. I think I see Calvin Ridley as a huge breakout candidate this year too, just because there's so much room for production opposite Julio. He had over 200 points last year as a rookie. I mean, he's only gonna go up from there. I think he's a huge guy to keep in mind. You look at a guy like 2 kind of trendy breakout picks like Dante Pettis and Chris Godwin. Like,
Yes.
if you can get them in like round 7 or 8, like that's a good
Take
spot
'em.
for them. I think Godwin's going a little bit too early for that, but
Yep.
I mean, if you can get him at the right price, he's a really fun player to get. This is where you want to fill in those first couple bench spots. You take a guy like Cooper Kupp or Mike Williams, and then you get another running back that's a similar level of upside, and that's what you want to build your bench with, because
Like Carson.
you need those guys that you can fill in on bye weeks, but also could be starters if an injury happens to a different guy on his team, if his team decides to feature him more. Those are the guys you want.
Yep. And usually, like, what I'm doing is if I have one of those top 5 picks, I'm taking one of those running backs. If not, I'm getting a top wide receiver. Second round, I'm usually getting a wide receiver. Third and fourth round is when I'm getting those running backs like Mack, Damian Williams. And then rounds 5 through 8, I really like the wide receivers here. I don't love the running backs, except for like Chris Carson and Mark Ingram, who are at the beginning of these. Otherwise, you're dealing with like Tevin Coleman and guys I really don't want as like my first guy off my bench. So
Yep.
Dante Pettis, Mike Williams, like these are the guys to target in rounds 5 through 8, not really running backs. And then past that, tier D, like they're kind of backups on their teams, and we really didn't want to like focus too much on them. We wanted to focus on, the guys that you want to focus on. But we do have like would you rather here for you.
Ooh, love it.
Devontae Adams or DeAndre Hopkins?
This is like picking between my future children, like child A and child B. I would flip a coin if it came to it. Like, say I have the 7th pick and
Yeah.
they're both there. I'm flipping a coin because I literally cannot pick. I love them both so much. If I had to pick, I think I would take DeAndre Hopkins. But
Yeah,
I
me
mean,
too.
like it's so close.
I would do the same thing.
It's so close. And Devontae, don't be mad at me, please.
Sorry.
Scott, over to you. Adam Thielen or Mike Evans? 2 guys that are just always overlooked.
Yeah. It depends on what kind of league, honestly. I'll point it to that. Like, if it's a full point PPR, Adam Thielen all the way. If it's even a half point or standard, I'll take in Mike Evans just for the yards and, like, racking that up.
Oh, yeah. I owned both these guys last year on different teams. Look, they're both so much fun to own. It's just, you're not going to regret taking either one, but I think I would lean Thielen regardless, just very slightly. And his ADP is a little bit lower, so he's a guy I'm more likely to get on my team, I think.
That's true. Yeah. And then you got Allen Robinson or Kenny Galladay.
Kenny Galladay. I just think the upside is huge. I don't think that the Bears are going to be as good as they were last year. Maybe the offense has to score a little bit more, so there's a little bit more volume for Robinson. But I think Galladay is he's just again
Solid.
another one of these overlooked guys. He's so solid. He has all the tools. And is this his 3rd or 4th year right now?
I think third.
I mean, that's like the recipe for success right there.
Yep.
I think Kenny Galladay is a guy that if he's the first guy off my bench, I would be comfortable with him as my flex starter too. I think you're in a good spot with him.
I agree with that.
All right, last one. 2 guys dripping with upside here. Robbie Anderson of our hometown Jets or Mike Williams? Who do you think?
Williams,
Scott?
man. I got to go with Mike Williams. Robbie Anderson, he doesn't have he's a tall guy, but he's kind of like lanky. He doesn't have the prototypical size that you want to look for in a number one wide receiver.
He's so skinny.
He's really skinny. Yeah, and he's like a fast guy, but I don't want to say he's a one-trick pony. I really like watching him. He's electric, but he was hurt a lot last year because of that size, and there's a lot of unknowns with that team. Like, will Darnold take the second-year step? We don't know. Like, he might not, actually. We're banking on it, but I would take Mike Williams. Like, now he's vaulted into the second position or second guy in the depth chart behind Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen isn't even going to compete with him for targets because he's in the slot, and Mike Williams is on the outside now. And third year coming into the league, really high draft pick. Sky's the limit for Mike Williams. I think he's going to explode this year. All right, let's get into tight ends before we move on for our tier positional guys. It's pretty simple. Tier A is just three guys, and what I will say before we get into which guys we would take and the scenarios that you would take them in, I just want to say that the combined year of these three was historic at a rate that will never be repeated in the next 5-10 years, in my opinion. The amount of points that they had combined, the amount of yards that they had combined between Travis Kelce, Zach Ertz, and George Kittle, in my opinion, won't be repeated for the next 5 years. It just it's light years above the amount of total points that the next three combined guys in 1 year scored. So I don't think these guys are going to do nearly as well this year combined.
Yeah, and I mean, you're definitely paying the price. You have to draft them early. I mean, Travis Kelce, look, he scored like basically the same amount of PPR points as Juju Smith-Schuster last year, who was a huge breakout star, but you're getting that production at a tight end spot. The downside is tight ends are more likely to get hurt than the other positions here because they take such a beating. It's such a tough position to play. And for that reason alone, I mean, I kind of am starting to come around. The more mock drafts I do, the less I like my teams when I kind of take one of these guys in round 3, or even in Kelsey's case, you have to take him in round 2 and early round 2. So while it is really fun to own them, I can kind of see where you're coming from, where you're telling us to stay away. Although I'm going to say on draft day, it might be really hard to stay away from Kittle, my guy. So
your guy,
we'll see. Like if it's like late round 3, and I'm staring at Leonard Fournette and who's a wide receiver I don't like, and like Julian Edelman, then I'm probably going to go with Kittle. But
that's fair.
We'll see.
That's a very fair. Yeah, I like that too.
More likely, though, you're going to be winding up with a guy in Tier B or maybe even Tier C. I say Tier B is the sweet spot here. This is rounds 4 through 8, closer to probably like 6 through 8, I would say.
Yeah.
I would say round 6 is similar to like where the quarterbacks start to go. People are going to start realizing that they want to fill out the other positions on their roster. So you're looking at guys like O.J. Howard, Evan Ingram, Hunter Henry, Jared Cook, and Eric Ebron. Evan Ingram on the Giants, he's like the only pass catcher left standing. They're just already depleted. So he's an interesting guy. And you know how much we love Jared Cook on the Saints. What a move for the Saints picking him up.
Time.
If you're not gonna get one of those two guys, Scott, who are you looking at?
Looking at O.J. Howard, and he's getting drafted a little too early for my liking, to be honest. But there's such a vacuum when Deshaun Jackson and Adam Humphries left that it's only plausible that Godwin and O.J. Howard will fill that void. So I'll take him like end of round 6 kind of thing. Like I don't want him to necessarily be my 5th best player, but if I already have 3 running backs, 3 wide receivers, maybe I got Deshaun Watson instead of like wide receiver that I didn't want, like Edelman or AJ Green. Then I would take O.J. Howard and Evan Ingram there, and then Cook you can get around later, probably like 7 or 8, which I love. Tier C, you're looking at some, I don't want to say backups, but like low-end starters. So we got Delaney Walker, Vance McDonald, David Njoku, Greg Olsen, guys like that. A couple guys that stand out to me, I don't know about you, but I like Jack Doyle. He had more routes run when him and Eric Ebron were on the field last year. And Ebron's 13 touchdowns, like it will never be repeated for the amount of low catches that he had. So to me, like I don't want to say I'd rather have Doyle than Ebron, but I'd rather stay away from both of them. But if you had to pick and someone took Ebron like 3 rounds before they should have, like Doyle is not a bad guy to have.
Yeah, I think Ebron is probably the most likely guy on this entire position list to be a bust this year. Because, like, while maybe, he'll score 9 touchdowns this year, or maybe he'll even score 11. like, again, you're just playing with fire. Trust me, I owned him. I owned him last year on a title-winning team, and at the end of the season, he was not on my roster because it was so infuriating.
Yeah, I remember
playing the game with him. Oh, is Jack Doyle coming back? Oh, Jack Doyle's running like 80% more routes than him, but it doesn't matter. It was nuts. So I agree. I kind of like Jack Doyle. Another guy in this like lower tier, or two guys really that I like, Austin Hooper and David Njoku. I think those two offenses are going to be really, really good. And that's the baseline for a low-end starting tight end because there's not enough good tight ends to go around. You might as well just hitch your wagon to a good offense and hope it pans out.
Another guy, Trey Burton, who was highly drafted last year and did okay. We talked about him last week or 2 weeks ago. But Trey Burton could be a guy that could have like a solid year this year too, as like maybe a low-end starter or a high-end backup if you want to take two tight ends.
Yeah, and don't sleep on guys like Chris Herndon. Even though he's suspended, it actually is going to depress his value even more. You could probably just pick him up off waivers.
Yeah.
And Kyle Rudolph, who you don't even bother until it gets to December. But, you know, when it gets to be Christmas time, Rudolph the Red Zone Reindeer, he's a guy you want to pick up later on.
Ooh, I dig that. Let's do a quick would you rather. We'll just do two. Evan Ingram or O.J. Howard?
For me, O.J. Howard, just because the team's going to be better than the Giants. I think Ingram, he'll get a lot of volume, but I don't know, like you have Eli Manning or Daniel Jones throwing you the ball, like how many high-value red zone targets is he going to get? I don't know. You're really relying on Saquon to run like 80 yards down the field and then Evan Ingram cash in at that point.
Yeah. And they don't have any like other wide receivers, like Sterling Shepard broke his thumb. We don't know how long he's going to be out, if at all. Golden Tate might be suspended. That might get overturned. We don't know. Corey Coleman, if he was going to have any value at all, he tore his ACL for what it's worth. So, yeah, I'd rather have O.J. Howard. And then the next one, we got David Njoku on the Browns or Delaney Walker.
David Njoku, just because, look, I love Delaney Walker. Like, he was a huge part of my fantasy success in the past, 4, 5, 6 years, but he's washed at this point. And that Titans team, like, again, like, you're dealing with Marcus Mariota or Ryan Tannehill, and I don't trust either one.
Yep.
On the Njoku side, at least I trust Baker Mayfield to make some plays. Right. I don't know if he's going to be an MVP caliber player like everyone says he's going to be, but he's going to make some plays. And David Njoku is still ascending, while Delaney Walker is on the way down. What about you, Scott? If you had to take one of the top three, I'm going to put you in a hypothetical that will definitely not happen because you seem to be adamant you're not taking one. Let's say Kelsey, you're not taking him around two, but if you had to pick Zach Ertz or George Kittle, who are you picking?
Ertz, man, he's my guy, like through and through. I didn't have Kittle. I had Kittle in one league last year, but it was a league like I didn't do well in it at all, so I didn't really care about it, to be honest. But Ertz in PPR, like he was almost like a slot receiver last year for them. And that team is only going to get better this year with all the offseason things that they had. No more Golden Tate to like take away targets from him. And his guy, Carson Wentz, back. So I'd rather have Ertz. We also don't know how George Kittle is going to do with Jimmy G.
Yeah, good point.
That's something no one's talking about. Like they barely played together last year.
Oh, that scares me a little bit. Oh no.
Another fold there.
You look like a supervillain right now. Just for the listeners out there, Scott's got his shades on. He just got LASIK, and
it's 10 o'clock at night.
Him casting shade on George Kittle just seemed like the most evil thing I've ever seen in my life.
I dig that comparison because these are really dark shades, and it's, again, 10 o'clock at night, and I can't see anything, but I'd rather this than have the light blind me.
All right, so that wraps it up for our Positional Tiers episode. Hopefully we didn't lose too many of you along the way. We got into the thick of it today, Scott.
There's a thick one. Thick episode.
If we had to sum up our draft strategy based on tiers, what do you think? What's the easiest way we can describe it to the listeners out there? Maybe even the listeners in this room with us right now, like Rob, that need to hear
that
something.
would be great.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm going to need you to go ahead and come in on Saturday. Yeah, I would say, first of all, do your own tiers. Don't take our word for it because we don't know what we're talking about. No, I'm just kidding. We do. We do a lot of research for you. But
there's going to be plenty of tiers for me.
That's funny. Pile up on running backs and wide receivers in tiers A and B. what we gave you. So if you don't remember what they were, hit the rewind button, go back to running back and wide receiver, and listen to tiers A and B before you take a quarterback or tight end. Even think about it. You need 4 or 5 solid starters. I know, Sean, you and I agree on this, in our opinion, before you even think about, and Frank, you too, before you think about QB and tight end, unless it's one of those top 3 in each position. And also, like, thing that people don't think about or talk about at all is those top 4 or 5 players should be the best skill position, like skill-wise players also. Like, you're like, if you're thinking like, I don't know, like how I feel about, I don't know, Mark
Julian
Ingram's
Edelman, Marlon Mack.
Julian Edelman, Marlon Mack, or like Mark Ingram. I don't know if they're like the best skill. Like, are they the best player on their team? Are they pop out of the screen on Sundays? Like, don't take them then. They should be the top 5 players on your team as well.
And again, don't overthink it. Pick a guy that's fun to watch, right? If you have fun watching Odell Beckham on Sundays, like all of us do, and you're picking between him and a guy like, even like Dalvin Cook. Like, say you picked a running back early, and for some reason Odell and Dalvin fell to you in the second round.
Right.
If you want Odell, take Odell. Don't overthink it. That's what we're talking about when we say don't make your own pasta too often. Just it's a once in a while thing. If you want Odell on your team, you're not going to get him in the 3rd round, so you got to take him in the 2nd.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was going to say was, explain it to me. Explain it to us in the way we'll understand, in food terms.
In food terms.
Make ramen if you need to.
I'm surprised no one brought up mac and cheese earlier.
Oh, that's true. Totally glossed over that.
It's technically a pasta dish.
Totally.
What's the best like pasta for mac and cheese though? Because that like changes it.
Elbow.
Solid point. Yeah, I like elbows.
Fusilli.
I think elbows work really well.
Fusilli is a good one.
Fusilli.
I don't even know what that one is. I just know
let
it's
me look that one up too.
It's good.
I feel like I'm just a fan of thick pastas because they just get nice and doughy.
Oh, Fusilli's
doughy.
That's what I'm looking for.
Wait, is Fusilli the same as
pasta.
gemelli?
Geminis?
I think they're similar.
Yeah.
You know what I like? Those there's like the stuffed shells, but the mini ones, the mini shells.
Got you.
I was trying to. Yeah, I didn't want to say shells.
That might be the best mac and cheese pasta because it catches all the cheese.
The Annie's
and the cream.
mac and cheese with the shells. That's pretty good. I'm a fan of that.
dig
Right.
that.
Every pasta has a purpose.
Exactly.
Dig that, dude.
Honestly, there's too many shapes of pasta.
Yeah, every pasta has a purpose. Like those thick rope spaghettis, the purpose is to embarrass you on a first date. That's
Exactly.
what
Annoy
they're
the
there for.
shit out of you and not be good at all. That's
We're
what the
gonna
purpose is.
rag on spaghetti in the next couple episodes. I just have a feeling. And angel
Oh,
hair.
spaghetti's got it coming for it.
It's gotta go.
Wait, Rob, let's get into your take about spaghetti. We got time right now. Let's hear it.
You
We
want
do.
me to get into my take about spaghetti?
Please
Get
do,
it,
man.
Spaghetti's a fucking joke.
That's a
All
quick
right.
take there. That was good.
What has it
It's
done to
too
you, man?
thin.
Yeah, seriously.
It's too thin. And also, like, the default way that it's served, it just is like... It's just watery sauce and then
Yes.
these watery, long, thin
what I was
noodles. It
about to
fucking
say.
sucks.
How about the way it's eaten?
Nobody likes it. If you want me to like spaghetti, then put penne alla vodka sauce on it.
I can get behind that
Wouldn't be penne
a
alla.
little
It would just
bit.
be alla vodka sauce. Vodka
Spaghetti
sauce.
alla vodka. How do you like?
What
What's
the
the best way to eat it? Do you cut it up? Do you shovel it onto your fork, or do you spin your fork?
You know what it is? You know what it
I don't
is?
like
I'm
either.
not willing. I am not willing to put in the work for such a
Diminishing
disappointing taste. Yeah, for such a disappointing taste and texture profile. Whereas if you were to slather the spaghetti in alla vodka sauce, it's not even. What am I saying? Vodka sauce. If the spaghetti was
alla vodka.
doused in vodka sauce, then I'd be willing to put the work in because that tastes good and it's thickening it up and giving it a better texture.
So Rob's just really here for the sauce at the end of the day. As
the
long as he
vodka.
gets that in, he's fine. And the vodka.
Basically, drown it in vodka.
I just
and
want
you're
a
good.
thicker pasta that's not going to fly all over the place, especially when it's watery tomato sauce that's just flinging everywhere and getting me dirty.
Yeah, I'm with you, actually. I was about to say, like, every time I have spaghetti, I feel like the sauce becomes watery. And I think I know why. You're told when you make your sauce, you want to take a little bit of the pasta water and put it in. That's like a secret trick for those of you out there. But the problem is that when you put the spaghetti in the sauce, the spaghetti is already holding a lot of the water, so you're getting double the water in the sauce. That you don't want that.
We don't like
you
that.
Don't want that. We need more sauce.
And I always feel
per
rude.
capita.
I always feel rude eating it because what's the right way to eat it? I'm supposed to spin it around on my fork into a giant wad and then shove it in my mouth.
That's what I'm saying.
Or am I supposed to slurp it up like a cartoon character?
You gotta roll it.
You know?
You gotta like twist it in your fork. I think that's like the Italian way, but it doesn't. I don't care.
Yeah, but even then, you still get the little stragglers coming out of your mouth from the end of the wad.
That's true.
And then you're like,
then
then
it's
you
all
look
over
like a
your
total
mouth.
idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then your cheeks are puffed out like a chipmunk, and then you gotta slurp up the rest of the thing.
You gotta be a big
We are
napkin
so
guy.
getting sponsored. We're so getting sponsored by spaghetti after this. This is great.
Barilla,
It's
maybe.
It's an all-around disaster, and that's the summation.
Dude, all this is
nightmare.
making me think about is how much more I need to eat pasta with Rob because I've been missing out on just him just struggling to put food in his mouth.
Let's make it happen.
It's making me hungry right now,
Let's
honestly.
have a pasta party. Let's have a
Like
pasta
we
party.
used to do it for soccer. Oh
Yes.
wow!
I'm 100% down.
Except for we don't work it off the next day. We just get fat.
Wait, let's have a podsta party.
Ooh.
Oh, we gotta end it there. That's just too good.
Yeah, that's
That's it.
the best place to end it. That
See you
was
later.
that hit different right there.
That would
Friends of the pod, you're all invited to the podsta party. Well, see you later.
Well, see you later.
All right, guys.
Hot boy summer.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Frank.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it, man.